Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Pavan's Perspective, my podcast. This is a super exciting episode. We have Tim Brown, Football Hall of Fame, extraordinary career at the Raiders. I'm sure you all know him. Let's find out how we can get some of his positive energy, his positive mindset, how we can get that incorporated into our lives so that we can rise, so all of us can rise to the top. And he's so generous with his time that he's willing to share and teach what it takes us to all get to the best of what we're doing. So, and of course, my co-pilot, I totally forgot. I'm so dazzled by Tim Brown. I totally forgot my co-pilot, Mae Mackey, who is just an incredible person, member of my team, been with the firm for 16 plus years, helped train a big chunk of AngelAi. Couldn't have done any of this without her. So here we go. So, Mae, do you want to start off with the first question for Tim?
Sure, absolutely, Pavan. I'm so excited to be here. I love football, and so to be here with this legend. But is there any moment in your career, college or professional, that stands out to you and that today people still come up to you and they ask you about all the time?
Well, if we're not going to count the talk about the Michigan State game, which obviously put me in a totally different arena at that particular time in college football, um, I think my rookie year, a lot of people were saying that I couldn't do in college I couldn't do in NFL what I had done in college.
Oh, wow.
So the very first time I touched the ball in the NFL, I returned a kick 97 yards for a touchdown.
Yes.
So that sort of shut everybody up, right? So it got a lot of pressure off me right away. Nobody could say I hadn't done anything. They couldn't say, you know what I mean? So it was hands off Tim Brown. So I had time now to go and build my game and really work on and not have to worry about answering to the media and all that kind of stuff. Ended up having an incredible rookie year too, by the way. But I really think the pivotal moment and when I really became a guy who stood out different as a different guy, not just a receiver, is when I was 35 years old. I became the oldest man to return a punt for a touchdown
Oh, wow.
in the history of the NFL. I think that sort of made people go, wow, this guy did it at when he was 22 and now he's 35 and he's still returning punts and kicks and for 89 yards. I mean, it was a moment that sort of made people shake their heads, and I really think it sort of put me in that light of a Hall of Famer, and put me in line to be able to get that done.
I love that. I love that. It lines up with our motto that nothing is beyond reach and age doesn't determine, how
That's right.
limitless you can be. I love that. But when you think of the NFL now compared to how it was when you played, is it better? Is it worse?
Well, the guys are making 10 times more money. These guys make half a year what I made in 17 years, right? So, so it can't be bad if guys are getting taken care of the way they are. Sure, the game has changed. The rules are different. Um, when I first came into the league, I mean, trying to escape from a DB was the hardest thing ever because at that
Mm,
time they could have hands on you until the ball was in the air. You know
mm.
what I mean? So who knew when that was, right? So I mean, you 15 yards down the field, you still got somebody holding on to you and all that kind of stuff. So it was really different. They changed that rule, halfway through my career. Now they could only, 5 yards they could chuck you or whatever.
Mhm.
But now you don't see a lot of guys trying to play bump and run defense, on a regular basis anyway. So now you got these bigger, more athletic guys, if you want to say, who are having get free releases off the as if they're gonna drop a ball or something.
Right, right.
So so it makes you wonder what the defenses are thinking. But yeah, the game has changed, But I'm never going to be a one that's going to poo poo on what's happening now.
Right, right.
I'm happy for the guys. I work with the NFL Players Association. I was on the executive committee
Nice.
for this very thing to happen. So guys can make more money, and we may not be getting anything from it, but at least you see hard work did pay off. Did pay off.
I
That's
love.
great. So, one of the questions I always like to ask at every podcast is I want the people to get to know you and the formative years of Tim Brown. Can you talk a little bit about what was it like? Where did you grow up? What was it like? And did you know growing up that you would be a football star?
Yeah, I did not. To point blank answer that question, no, I did not know that. Um, I grew up the youngest of five kids, and when I turned 17, my mom and dad had another child in the mid 40s, which was in those days unheard of. But it happened. Be a mistake or not, it happened. And so I wasn't too happy about that because I love being the baby of the family. But I ended up being the baby boy of the family because I have a little sister. But my life was filled around school and church. My mom was a big supporter of church. My dad not so much, but he whatever my mom said, he made us do it. So Wednesday night, Friday night, all day Sunday, I was a church kid. So and I really think that probably separated me from a lot of other kids. Because there were kids in my high school who were probably more talented, but maybe they didn't have the discipline that I had, and which gave the coaches a little bit more confidence that I could get certain things done. So. But yeah, no, growing up, man, I played sports to be with my friends. I
Mm-hmm.
played football, I played basketball, I ran track because that's what my boys were going to do. And yeah, I think around my junior year, I'm 16 years old. Things are like everybody's like, wait a minute, what's happening? Something's different is going on with Tim now. Because we got people starting to come to the school and ask about me, and so I mean, we knew that there was something going on, but no one. I have to say, the girls' PE coach, she was doing the announcements for my senior year, and she announced me as the '87 Heisman Trophy winner in 1984.
Oh,
She announced me as
wow.
that. So I didn't even know what the Heisman was, and so yeah. So I think that there were people who may have seen things in me, but I was so focused on going to get an education and doing what my parents and asked me to do. There was no future in football, is what I was told. You go up there and get that education and get on back home and get to work, and that was my plan.
All right. So for young athletes, people in high school or younger, what advice do you have for them today to pursue their professional career?
This may be very basic, but when I my second, third year in the league, I can't remember exactly when it was. I started putting work on my left foot and hard on my right foot on my practice shoes. So
Mm.
every time I looked down, I saw work hard. There's no substitute for working hard. You know what I mean? And you never know what can happen. I think because I worked hard in high school, I worked extremely hard in college. I was put in a position to get drafted in the first round in the NFL. And, I had a great rookie year, got hurt my second year, missed 15 games. Now I got to really work hard to get back. And that's what I did. And a couple years after my injury, I was back in the Pro Bowl. And a couple years after that, I became a, number one receiver in the league. So I just think there's no substitute for working hard. I tell people all the time, you give me a talented kid, you give me a kid that's going to work hard, I'll take that kid that's going to work hard every time because he's going to be consistent. This guy's going to be up and down like a yo-yo, but this one work hard kid, he may not have the ability to run a 4.3, but man, he's going to give you everything he has every time he can.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing basic about that. It falls right in line with what we're doing with Angel AI, and everyone has to put their foot forward and work as hard as they can to the best
Yeah.
of your ability. So that's great sound advice. I love that.
So how do you get up every morning and keep that mindset of working hard? Because I know there must be days where it feels like, why did I wake up today?
Yeah, look, it's I mean, I'm in the middle of really two businesses right now. We tried to squash one about 7 years ago, and it came back alive out of nowhere, which is not the worst thing, but it just makes the work doubly tough. So I have a fuel transport and supply business, and we're doing a debit card business. So you know, you're so close, but yet so far, right? But in my mindset, I never let myself go to the negative. I am a complete, glass half full guy, right?
Me too.
It can have that much water. That glass is full. You know what I mean? So I find a way every time, to look at the positive. I mean, yeah, I'm not looking over the negative or what's reality, but at the same time, I'm still here and I have an opportunity to make something happen, to make a change in whatever I'm trying to do. And I just figure it's going to happen. If I keep working hard, I keep, putting my resources to what we're doing, then things are going to happen for me.
Awesome. So, can you think of a time when you just had just an awful setback in your life, and you felt like saying, "What the heck is all this for?" And then how did you get through that?
Yeah, in business, when I was early in my career, um, I thought I was going to have a shoe deal when I came out of college. That shoe company basically said, yeah, if you go to a good market, we'll look at it. I went to LA, they still wouldn't look at me, and I was in the middle of doing a deal, and I got hurt. So I've been doing a lot with Foot Locker. I went to Foot Locker and told them, hey, I want to do my own shoe company. And that's what I did. I started my own shoe company called Pro Moves, and it was the best thing ever.
Hmm.
It really was the best thing ever until it wasn't, right? Until that moment came where uh, your manufacturer said they didn't want to be in business with you anymore. Uh, Foot Locker, who had carried your brand as long as they could, said they couldn't anymore because they were getting pressure from other brands to drop us. And for all that to happen in a matter of a month was overwhelming. It was hard to fathom how this little company in DeSoto, Texas, can be affecting a worldwide
Mm.
business. You know, I'm not going to say where because y'all know who they are, uh, but it was really hard to take. It was hard to take. I couldn't understand why I was being put out the door after we had done so much great work with everybody involved. I mean, they chased us out of pawn shop. We had shoes in pawn shops, and they chased us out. It was ridiculous what was going on. In today's world, that couldn't have happened, right? You got on social
Yes.
media, you got some people behind you, and they would have got blown up. But in 1994, you were on your own. Call Jesse Jackson. That's about all. That's about the only help you had back then. So it was really tough to overcome that. I went from having a shoe business to being out of business in less than a month, and and we didn't know what had hit us.
Wow. Wow, I thought there were a lot of sharks in banking. I didn't realize there were such huge sharks in the shoe business.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? But no, look, anytime you have the ability to, even if you don't do it, but if people think you have the ability to touch millions of people, they see that as being a threat to their bottom line. And I get it because we probably would have eventually gotten there, but we weren't close to being where they obviously thought we could be. And so it is what it is. I mean, but Pro Moves is not dead yet. I got something planned. So we some 20 years later, we may bring Pro Moves back. 30 years later.
Incredible. So when you got hit so hard, how did you like get your mindset back and say, okay, let's just move forward?
Yeah, well, thankfully I had football, right? So I had something that I could dig into. Um, and for my company, I had a lot of people who wanted to stay with us no matter what. So we sort of got away from shoes and all that and went into apparel and had some success doing that. Got an NFL license and a college license to be able to make Notre Dame stuff and Raider stuff. And Cowboy stuff at that time because they had just won a couple of Super Bowls and were on their way to winning a third Super Bowl in '95. So we just pivoted. We just pivoted. We had the people who wanted to work. We had opportunities out there. We pivoted to something and did our best to try and make that happen.
Gotcha.
I,
So
I,
basically keep your mind clear, keep your thoughts positive, and you find a new opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, I tell people, and some people say, Tim, yeah, that sounds, good, but in today's world, mental health is a real deal and all this, and I get all that, but at the same time, if something crazy happens to you and you're still here, you're still on this earth, you're not in jail, you're not in the hospital, you got a chance to change it. You got a chance to change it. I mean, things are going to happen to us all the time, but again, if I'm still here and I'm capable of calling and talking and writing and doing those things, then I got a chance, man. I got a shot. I still have a shot to make it happen. I think, my attitude can be a little aggravating to people because, people want you to be down sometimes. They want you to, be woe is me, and I may have my moments privately where I am like that, but I know I have a wife, I have family, I have office, I have people who I work with who are looking for me to make decisions to head us in directions, and I can't walk in those places and be like, well, guys, I don't know what we're gonna do today. I can't be that guy.
Right. And I think that's what is the difference, though, right? Like you're human. So, of course, you're going to have moments when you don't feel your best, you're not
Right.
operating at your max capacity. But the difference between you and other people are that you don't dwell there, you don't stay there. And which leads me to my next question I wanted to ask you. So, what makes you or what makes a legend as opposed to someone who's still doing a great job, working hard, but what differentiates a legend like you are?
Look, I do believe that working hard is the key, but we talked about the talented person versus a person that work hard. Well, you get a talented person who says they want to work hard, that person can become a legend.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happen to have the ability to do certain things that set me apart from other people. My ability to make people miss in the open field, even though I wasn't a small, quick, whatever. I'm 6 feet, 195, 200 pounds, but I had quick, light tendencies to make people miss me, not even touch me in the middle of the field. That was a unique quality that I had, and so I worked on that quite a bit. You know what I mean? So I do believe that God blesses us with our daily amounts of talents or whatever. And I think for some people he overdoes it. You know what I mean? And
I agree.
you
I
know,
agree.
and yeah, it's just the truth. When you look at a Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant. I mean, you look at a Michael
Yeah.
Jordan. You look at a Jerry Rice. You look at these guys and you go, well, that's just not fair. Nobody I've ever been around works harder than Jerry Rice.
Mm.
Nobody. I just haven't seen anybody on the football field work harder than this guy. And he's a talented guy, very talented guy. So, I believe that, with guys who don't sit on those talents, who say, hey, I have talent and I'm going to push them to the nth degree, those guys become legends. Those guys become Hall of Famers.
Amazing.
So in your life, when you hit these hard moments, who around you, who do you give the most credit to as far as supporting you?
Well, being married 27 years, right? My wife has seen some incredible days What's that song that's out there? We've had some good
Yes,
days.
yes.
You
Some hills to climb.
know what I mean? Some hills, you know. But so certainly it all starts with her. Well, let me back up. You know, I understand every day when I roll out of bed that I got somebody who's looking out for me,
Mm,
right? Uh, you know, and I think from that standpoint, uh, when you know from a spiritual standpoint, you have somebody who is saying, "Look, I got your back. I just need you to keep going." You know, that makes you feel good too. You know, so but look, my brother is. Uh, he really is the COO of the businesses that we have, and without him, it would be very, very difficult because there were times where things got a little thin, where it was like, "Hey, bro, we ain't got no money to pay this week, right?" But being that he's family,
yeah.
we can roll with that. We'll double it up next week. But a lot of people would not have dealt with that situation. So between God and my wife and my brother, I'm able to basically get through whatever I need to. And then I do have this group of guys we call, I thought I had something, we call Bond, Brothers of Notre Dame.
Mm,
And these are 15 guys. One of the guys is the president of the NBA, Byron Spurrell. We got brothers who are president or CEOs of electricity companies. We got police officers. We got school teachers. You got entrepreneurs. You name them, we got them. We got guys who have written books. So we have it all. We have a brother who's never had an 8 to 5 job in his life. You know what I mean? But he's making a couple $1 million a year, so doing his thing. So with that eclectic group of men, you stick your problem in the washing machine, right? And it comes out like, whoa, it's clean now, right? And they have a unique way of getting you focused on uh, what you're trying to accomplish, and it's really been beneficial also.
You made a statement about God giving you talents, and you got to use them. So, and clearly you've used the talents that God's given you. But now, in at this stage of your life, where do you see your talents, or I would say it a different way, what do you think God's design is for you in this stage of your life?
Yeah, I was sort of having this conversation with the president of a bank over the weekend, who we're trying to do some work with for our card. In the fintech business, what they call a debit card, they call it a fintech, financial technical business. Usually folks who run those kind of companies have this laundry list of accolades as far as academics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I have a nice, little beautiful degree from the University of Notre Dame, but I don't have the background of a fintech CEO. And the point that I was making to the president is, I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly who I'm not. And so the point is that my role at this particular point is not to try and sit behind this desk in this crown chair, this king chair here, and try to prove to somebody that I'm some big, fintech CEO. But my job is simply to bring people to the table, because of my name, because of my career, whatever. If I call, Pavan, if I call you, if I call you, I may get a call back, because everybody, what Tim Brown calling about? Let me see what he's talking
right.
about, and just getting that opportunity, getting a chance to get you on the phone and say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. I think people almost have to take a second look because we have something that's legitimate. And I think from that standpoint, is paid off in great dividends for us because we really hadn't had doors shut in our face. I'm not saying everybody wants to do business with us, but at the same time, we get on the call, we get a chance to lay out our plan. If they like it, great. If not, we move on. But I think my role at this particular point is to bring people to the table to help our businesses out, and that's what we're trying to do.
What did you have to sacrifice to reach your success? Do you have any regrets about anything that you may have had to sacrifice? Or is there anything that if you could do it differently, you would?
No, I definitely wouldn't do anything any differently at this particular point in my life. When I look back on it, I was pretty dogmatic, really about some of the things that I believed in. I was not. I never never drink alcohol or smoked or did drugs, anything of that nature. So I didn't have that issue to deal with. But when you're young in LA, you can get caught up pretty quickly, So I started something like middle of my rookie year because I found myself hanging out on Friday night and even thinking about going out on Saturday night if
Mm,
possible, before games. And I just felt like that was way too much. So I had a Thursday cutoff that, after Thursday, I'm not going any place. I'm not doing anything, And it was tough sometimes because a lot of stuff is going on in LA on Friday nights. And
yes.
so, but, we were able to discipline ourselves to the point that was not a big issue. And hey, no, hey, maybe this is too much information for y'all, but hey, y'all girls, don't be coming on my house after Thursday. Now there's a cutoff. Everything's cut off. But no, I mean seriously, uh, I believed that I had to be super disciplined to accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I thought I was going to play 17 years and be in
Mm,
the Hall of
mm,
Fame. But what I did know was the opportunity that I had was fleeting, right? It was not an opportunity that was guaranteed to be in my control even next year. And once I had the injury, my goodness, I realized that in tenfold now. My career could be over, and
mm,
I'm 23 years old.
mm,
You know what I mean? So I really locked in. When I came home, I can tell you, if I was supposed to work out, I worked out. In my 17 years or the 16 years of working out off season, I probably can count on one hand the workouts I missed
mm,
because that's how important it was for me to make sure that I got my workouts in. If it was 4 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it was, I got it done because there was nothing more important. Because when it's all over, I don't want to look back and say, like you just said, man, hey, is there anything you would have done differently?
mm,
And if I had missed make workouts, if I had, I would be. I'll tell you this quick story. When they reinstalled Gruden as the head coach in 2018, they brought a couple hundred guys back, right? And we're after their press conference, they're having dinner or lunch or whatever, and I just happened to sit down at a table. It was a table of 10, so I got 9 guys sitting at the table. And just out of the blue, one guy starts to say, "Man, I really wish I wouldn't have drank so much.
mm.
I probably could have got 3 or 4 years in, right?" And they went around the table and they got to me. And I said, "No, brothers, no, I don't have that story. I got it all out. You know what I mean? I literally gave this league everything I could possibly give it. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to be sitting here today saying, man, I wish, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I didn't want to be that coulda, woulda, shoulda guy. You know what I mean? And so because these guys are going to live with that for the rest of their lives, knowing that they blew an opportunity to play one more game, one more year, 3 more games, 3 more years. You know what I mean? And I'm just glad that really the injury put me in a different place, because I thought I was disciplined before that, but after that, I was super locked in because I realized at that point this thing could be over, before you even wake up straight. You know what I mean? So
Wow, that's an amazing testimony. That's what the young people today, that's what they need to hear. That's the kind of advice and the kind of mindset they need to be aware of. They need to hear your story over and over and over again.
yeah, it's tough. I mean, I have twins who are 21. I have a 25-year-old daughter. Have an older son. My older son gets it now,
Mm,
right? He gets it now. I can't say he got it when he was 25, but he gets it
Yeah.
now, right? He understands. He looks at me now with these eyes of, bro, like, I really appreciate what you did. You know what I mean? Like, I really appreciate you. You know what I mean? It's not about daddy, my daddy's Tim Brown or whatever. It's about, bro, I realized what you could have done. And, so it's a really good relationship. My 25-year-old, I think she's starting to get it. The 21-year-olds, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. And I mean that in a good way, but it doesn't matter. They have this way of thinking about the world, this and that. So I know if you have young people, I know what they're thinking and I know what they're saying because I live with a couple of them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so I know what that's all about.
Yeah, I have a 31-year-old, and it's some of my best days
God
with
bless
him,
you.
thank you, are when he tells me how he watched me, how hard he watched me work, and that he understands it now and he gets it, and he has that same discipline
Yeah,
now that he's out there in the working world. And
yeah,
so I totally understand what you're saying.
yeah. That's a beautiful thing.
But I'm gonna have to take this into a naughty direction here because I know what the fans really want to know is talk to us about some of the most fun you've had that you're willing to share.
Let me see what I've told my wife. So if something comes out, no, look, I think that to be a young man in LA, to be a successful athlete in LA, I can remember hanging out with Eddie Murphy one time, and again, I was just telling somebody the story the other day. I don't know, I still don't know how to take this, but I guess it is what it is. Eddie said to me, Tim Brown, you you don't have to worry about being good looking. If you keep catching them balls and driving that Porsche, you're gonna be all right in this city. So look, it was quite the fun time, no doubt about it. I mean, some of the things I sort of regret because what I looked at as being fun, maybe to some of these women it wasn't fun, right? Even though I was pretty open about, I wasn't playing games with anybody, but still, people get feelings, and that's never easy situation to be in. But look, I think um, I was smart enough to uh, not dive too crazy into the situation. But well, let me say this, and maybe this explain to you guys a little bit more who I am. When I was 18 years old, we went to. I was a freshman at Notre Dame, and we went to Hawaii to play in the Aloha Bowl, and I growing up here in Dallas, I've seen a lot of dirty lakes, but I've never seen a beautiful blue ocean
Mm.
before. And I like to tell people I'm a bit of an anomaly. I'm a brother who can swim, right? The water don't bother me, right? So so I see this ocean, and I'm like, oh my God, right? So I'm like, man, I ran upstairs, changed clothes, come back down, and my boy's like, Timothy, come back. Man, these brothers scared of water, forget them. Forget them. I jump on a boogie board and I'm off in the water. I'm off. I'm out there having a good old time. Good old time. But I turned around and my boys were about that big.
Oh, wow.
You know, I got way out there in the water, right? Now I'm thinking about the Jaws movies, right? I got the ugly cry going. I'm scared as I don't know what. And I got back about 10, 15 yards from the beach, and my boys literally dragged me out of the water because I was so tired. But while I was laying there on that beach, I heard the Spirit say, at 18 years old, just like you got too far out in the water naturally, so spiritually you can get too far out there that
Mm.
you can't get back. So I'm telling you that because that was sort of my governor as I went through my time in LA. there was always situations that came up where that popped in my head. But if you do that, you you may not come back from that. You know what I mean? So I think I always had that, governor or whatever you want to call it. I always had that level that I would always say, "No, I'm not gonna do that because." And a perfect example, and I'll say his name because everybody knows what happened when earlier in the year before Magic made that announcement. He had a party. He had a party, and you got 32 dot dot on your pager. Man, you too young for a pager. You don't know
Oh
nothing
no,
about no
I'm not.
pager.
I had a pager, a red one and a purple one. I just told you I have a 31-year-old. I can't be that
Oh, that's
young.
right. About that. That's right. So I got that page. Man, that Friday night I went to that party or whatever it was. And this was during the off season. Maybe it was right before we broke training camp. I can't remember. But all I know is I got to that door. And when I looked in that door, I said to myself, bro, that's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. But if you go in there, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a real problem. And, I like to tell people I wasn't a great dancer, but I did my best Michael Jackson moonwalk and I got my butt out.
Oh wow.
And then 2 months later, whatever it was, Magic made that announcement. And let me tell y'all this. I played 17 years of football. We never had a practice canceled for anything until that day.
Mm.
The Raiders had to cancel practice because a lot of my teammates did go in. They did participate, right? And now everybody was like, oh, Lord, my life is over, right? So, I think, man, God has always had his eyes on me, had his hands on me, and I've listened most of the time. Now I try and listen all the time, but when I was younger, I was trying to listen most of the time, and I think that really kept me from, having some really wild type stories because, I realized that your mind can get caught in that world and it becomes really difficult to get out of it.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a story.
Some good sound advice though. I do like the story about going out into the ocean and relating that to, hearing God tell you that just like this, if you go too far out in the world, you may not be able to come back. So don't try certain
Can't
things
get
you
back.
may not come back from. You may not recover. So again, sound advice.
What keeps you so spiritually connected? And because I think a lot of people have these experiences where God, the Spirit, whatever you want to call it, is talking to them and is trying to guide them, but they just don't listen. Why do you think you're listening and other people are not?
Well, I don't really want, I won't say anything about other people, but, at some point you have to realize God is real or he's not. And if you don't really believe he's real, you don't tell me, well, I believe he's real, but I'm not going to do what he says. That
Mm.
to me, that's counterproductive. You can't tell me that. I just think that you have to look, there's no way I'm married 27 years. My wife and I've never gone to sleep like, oh Lord, did I put my phone away?
Right.
You know what I mean? I've never had that situation. I've never had to, worry about my wife. Those are not things, that we worry about, and not just because of, other people being involved, but, you know, God helps me with my relationship with my wife, because there are things that he reveals to me about her that makes me go, well, that's why she acts like that. that's why she doing that. All right, well, let me just pray for her a little bit more. Then maybe we can, you know what I mean? So I just believe that if I believe what the Bible says, then I have to trust and believe that he has my best,
Mm.
he wants the best for me. And in this world, my mom and I talk about this all the time. How do people go in this world without trusting God? There's no way I would trust myself. You know what I mean? There's just no way I would trust myself to make some of these decisions that have to be
Agreed.
made. They're too big. They're too, I mean, they're too consequential, to say, oh, I can make that decision. Let me just do it from what I want to do from my experience. I don't know. I don't get that, but I do get it. I understand, because the enemy is busy too. But at the same time, I mean, I know that what works for me is being grounded in the Word, and because all of my advice comes from that. I don't give advice from a worldly point of view because I don't necessarily want people to follow what I did there. But when it comes to the spiritual side, it would be awesome if people would look at that more.
How old were you when you understood your commitment to God?
So part two. So I told you about the 18. So now I'm 25 years old, right? And I made one Pro Bowl. I had the injury, and I made the Pro Bowl again as a returner, and then I made my first Pro Bowl as a receiver. So now I'm verifiably the man, right? And things are going great. I just got a new contract. Uh, things are going about as good as they could possibly go. And I'm in Manhattan Beach, California. I got a tri-level condo.
Mm.
It's just me, but I got 3 levels. Why? I don't know, because I could, I
Yeah.
guess. And I'm in my bathroom getting ready for practice one day. And now I don't want y'all to think that I'm hearing voices because I'm not hearing voices, but I'm saying when I hear the spirit, I'm talking the spirit's talking to
I
my
got
spirit,
you. I
right?
got you.
And clear as day, the spirit says to me, Tim Brown, when are you gonna do my will?
Mm.
And my immediate, I was like, whoa, and then I went into Abba, 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 I'm a good guy. You know what I mean? I don't, I got 3 or 4 girlfriends, but they all happy. We all good. We like one big family around this mud. It's all good. And I heard the spirit say again, when are you going to do my will?
Mm.
And at that moment, it's like the spirit said, let me just remind you of something. You went to a high school that won 4 games in 3 years. You were 425-1 your 3 years on varsity. But Notre Dame came to recruit another guy from another school. And that night, you have a kick return, a punt return, a lone catch, and a lone run from scrimmage. You end up playing 27 years of football. The only time you scored 4 touchdowns is when Notre Dame came to recruit somebody else.
Mm.
Is that the problem we're having, Tim Brown? You think it was you who did that? Is that the problem we're having? I mean, we can talk about more. Oh, wait a minute. Let's talk about the fact that you became the first wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
But that year, you were actually a wishbone running back. Let's talk about that. I mean, so really what started to happen was all these things I thought that I had done, I was now starting to see that God was just building my platform. And my pastor had told me when I was 20, 21 years old, Timmy, God is going to put you in places because he wants you to take all this and give it back to him. And I tell you, that's not a very easy thing for an athlete to do, especially a successful athlete, because you get up in the morning. We talked about this working out stuff earlier. You running, you jumping, you doing all this lifting weights, you doing all this stuff. So you start to feel I'm the one who's doing this. So now you have that battle. Is it God or is it me? And I can tell you, I was 25 then, it really took 3 or 4 years before I really got it. I really understood. And I got to be a little careful about this because I don't want to, I got to be careful about what I say because I don't know if she married now. I don't know if let me just be careful about what I say. But I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were in Chicago. We had broken up, but we ended up together that night because I had left my wallet, and we had a great relationship, but we were on different planes. I was on my way to this, and she was R&B. Talking too much. So, so, and we were just on different planes, right? And but I was propositioned that night with we love each other. If we have a kid, then we would have to, be together. And nobody would question it because we got Junior right here, right? So it is what it is. And the hardest night of my life, without a doubt, because I was not going to do that. But and it really took me to a place. I did the show the next day that I was supposed to do, and I got home June 26, 1996. Never forget it. About 3:30 in the morning, God rolled me out of bed, and I gave it up. And so I was 29, about to turn 30 years old, and it was so amazing because I was breaking up with that relationship. I met my wife 2 weeks after I got saved. I met my wife. Two
Wow.
weeks after I got saved, I met her. And we were engaged in 6 months, married it within a year. And, we've been married, 27 years at this point. So
Wow, that's amazing.
I don't know how we got there, guys, but we got
No,
there.
I,
So I
I
don't know
love
how.
it. I love it. I love it. And I love the spiritual aspect. But you mentioned your mom a couple of times. So I want to
Yeah.
hear more. I
Yeah.
want to hear more about your mom, your family.
Oh boy, look, mom is the salt of the earth. I mean, she really has been. She's 84 years old now. She's still the head of the women's department in the
Yes.
church. So uh, uh, now this is a woman who has taught me that you can live what you preach,
Mm,
and you know she's old school. I mean, when she was 30 some years old, she was old school, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen my mom's knees before, right? I mean, I just, every dress that she has on comes down to her ankle, and she doesn't wear pants. She didn't think of that, I mean, she has just been salt of the earth, I mean, there were times when I was growing up, she would just say these things to me at the opportune time that just changed everything in my life at that
mm,
moment. And and I don't really think that she meant to do it, but it was just her wisdom and saying and trying to help me get through whatever situation I was getting through. And so I just think that I've been very fortunate. She was not a football fan, at all. I mean, every year, after I got to the league, she would always ask me, "Well, you're going to retire. You can retire now, right? You can." I mean, every year she asked me that. So when I got to the point when I was finally ready to retire, nobody was happier than her. But she never came to. She only went to one game my whole career, and the Raiders brought my family to town, and I didn't know they were there. And when I caught my 1,000 pass, they stopped the game and brought my family down on the
oh
field.
wow.
So yeah, that was a moment that I'll never forget. But she really didn't like football because she thought football would take me away from God,
Mm,
and so I think she felt better once she realized that in my situation it wasn't going to do that. But no, look, she's spoiled rotten because that's what I do, right? I mean, I try and make sure that she's spoiled rotten, and because she deserves it because uh, she she just gave me everything I could possibly want in life, and I'm super grateful about
I
that.
love that.
So we're coming up to the hour, and I'm going to close off with one last question. So, where do you think God's design is for you from this point forward? Where's He taking you?
Uh, you know, uh, I see that there are opportunities been coming about where, you know, a group of guys, maybe going around the country, speaking to groups, speaking in stadiums, things of that nature. There's a group right now working on that with one of the big, huge mega pastors in the country right now. Just sort of giving us a platform to be able to speak our truth. So, I mean, that would be incredible for me. Uh, my pastor is, almost 90 years old now. So I'm not saying that I'm going to take over the church. Don't get me, I'm not saying that at all, but whatever I can do for that church, I'm going to do for sure. And I don't do a lot of speaking in church, but I do, speak in our church frequently. But I, look, I think that's why I'm here. I just think that's all this adds up to that to me. You know what I mean? But I believe that's why we're all here. I mean, that's what the Bible tells us. I mean, we've been put on this earth for one reason, and that's to worship Him. So, but I know that's a lot deeper than people want to go, and I get that. And hey, I grew up in the church, and it took me 30 years to get there. So, if people are not going to church on a regular basis, I get how that's a very difficult concept to understand. But I am who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm not afraid to tell people who I am. So
I love it.
Awesome. That was a beautiful, beautiful explanation. I think the fans that are watching right now will leave this podcast with a tremendous sense of fulfillment and direction.
well, I appreciate that, man. I really do, and I love doing this because it makes me accountable to more people. You know what I mean? So now when people hear my voice and they hear my name on TV, they'll be like, "Well, I heard Tim Brown talking about he was saved. What they talking about on TV? What he do?" So and I think the accountability part is huge, man, and that's that group, that bond group that we have. I mean, that's the purpose of that group. So yeah, I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have those guys around too. So
Well, I am so honored to have been able to be a part of this podcast and to meet you, Tim Brown. I already had a level of respect for you, but I certainly have a newfound level of respect for you. Just hearing everything that you had to say, it was some insight for me, gave me some things to think about in my own spiritual walk. So I really appreciate all your words, and I wish you all the best in all that you do. And hopefully our paths will cross again.
well, let's make sure that happened, no doubt about it. But thank you guys. I really appreciate this. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but this has been very enlightening for me. So thank you very
It
much.
was
Thank
perfect.
Appreciate the
Thank
time.
you.
you. Bye
Cheers.
bye.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye bye.